listen to Nick Griffin as he begins to address the
British
audience.
National Party, of course, is here for all the peoples of Britain. But we do believe that the English get a particularly raw deal. We're the only people whose name is not allowed on the census sheet for a start, and we'll put that right. We're here for the English. We are here for all the British, the Scots, the Welsh and the Irish. And we're also, of course, here for the decent, settled minorities who paid into our society, who've helped to build our society, who accept that Britain should remain British, and we're here for them, and especially for those of them who will help us keep this country the way it should be. This is the first election in which we have non-Indigenous members. We have Sikhs, West Indians, Chinese people now as members of the British National Party. 5 years ago we had a Sikh, Rajinder Singh, on our election broadcast. That was as a friend. He's on the new election broadcast which goes out all over England, Scotland and Wales on various times on Monday. Rajinder Singh is on that broadcast as a member of the British National Party. Now, this manifesto is being launched right now on our website, which is bnp.org.uk. It'll have a huge readership, I'm quite sure. It's a very weighty document, weighs in at 90 pages, including the conclusion and the introduction. It's a serious piece of political kit, this, and I'm really very pleased with it. I can say that because actually I've had very little to do with it. But the people who've worked on it have done a very good job. The media are fixated on immigration, and it's, I think, worth noting that if you look in the contents, it's not that much about immigration. We cover other things. I'll look at the figures in a second. But it's important to note that in terms of immigration, there's nothing new in this document. The media needn't go scurrying away and looking for new things that we have to say about immigration, because while the other parties have now decided to talk about it because of the British National Party threat, we're just doing what we've always done, which is to say that Britain is full, it's the most overcrowded country in Europe, it's time to shut the doors, to persuade to get to leave all the illegals, the bogus asylum seekers, the foreign criminals, and for the people who are legally here, legitimately here, paying into our society, we have no issue with them whatsoever. They would have all the rights that everybody else has in this British society. The only thing new at all in terms of immigration is one addition, which is that we will review all citizenship grants since 1997, when the Labour Party started what is now acknowledged as a deliberate policy of changing the very nature of this country. We will review all of those citizenship grants to ensure that the people who have earned British citizenship have precisely that. They've earned it. British citizenship is not a bauble to be given to people who just happen to come here in the hope that they'll vote Labour. It's something which only should be earned as an honour and a privilege and given under those circumstances. But other than that, there's nothing new. There's a wholly different emphasis in this manifesto. First of all, the very first main section is about defence. That, in a way, isn't particularly the issue of the day for many people until you say the word Afghanistan. And on the doorsteps is probably our biggest draw in this election, other than our position on immigration, because the public are absolutely disgusted with the political elite, Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, UKIP alike, all of them committed to Britain continuing in Afghanistan in a war that has nothing at all to do with Britain and the British people, where the whole of Afghanistan is not worth the bones or the blood of one British soldier, the tears of one British mother, and it's also not our right to go stomping around the world trying to westernise all the Islamic countries. They should be allowed to run their countries as they wish. There's a huge difference between this party and the others, and we've reflected that by putting it at the very beginning of the manifesto. We also, incidentally, note, and I don't think anyone else has mentioned this, there is, behind the scenes, building up and being built up quite deliberately, a future war against Iran on behalf of American interests, oil interests and so on. And we specify not only would we bring our boys and girls back from Afghanistan, we will also resolutely refuse and will absolutely oppose any attempt to involve British troops in a war in or against Iran. It's none of this country's business, and we shouldn't go down that road. Beyond that, the overall theme, as is reflected by the cover really, with two cranes overlooking Westminster and Big Ben, is this is about rebuilding Britain. The main thrust of this manifesto is about the economy. The immigration section is 8 pages long. The section on the economy is 16 pages long. That's out of 76 main sections. When you add in agriculture, transport and energy, another 6 pages, which are clearly very, very closely tied to the economy, it's 24 pages out of 76. That's a reflection of our view that almost nothing can be put right now in Britain without doing 2 things. One, withdrawing from the European Union and re-establishing our government's right to run our country as it suits the people of this country and not bureaucrats and bankers many, many miles away. And secondly, we have to rebuild manufacturing in this country. It suffered a catastrophic decline under the Labour Party, which has simply been imposing conservative policies and with their globalisation dogma, wiping out vast sections of British industry. We are convinced that you can only have a decent high tax take, that you can only have stable communities, that you can only give families a chance to be independent and look after themselves if you have serious, productive industry making goods which the rest of the world needs. Now, in addition to the points which actually deal directly with the economy, there's many points in other areas which touch on that. We've worked everything through the prism of sorting out this country's broken economic base. So if, for example, you look at the section on crime on page 48, time to get tough with crime and criminals, the last 2 sections of that, the last 2 points, are introduce physical labour into the prison service in return for remission for good conduct. To this extent, there are numerous areas where electronically tagged physical labour is required. 2 immediate areas include the urgent reconstruction of sea defences and secondly, the placement of fibre optic cabling in the rural community. These facilities, provided by the prison service, will provide a welcome source of revenue. So everything we've done, we've tried to join it up. So the things that we need to do, the things we promised to do to make Britain a better place in all sorts of ways, will most of all work towards strengthening and giving us an effective economic base, because without that there's very little that can be done. We envisage doing this, we laid out in various ways, funded first of all by cuts. £3 billion saving on the Afghan war. According to Migration Watch, the real cost of immigration to Britain is £13 billion a year. That would stop. £18 billion in the hidden climate change levy on ordinary consumers' electricity bills. That would stop. £9 billion on foreign aid. That will be diverted from going into the bank accounts of third world dictators into actually doing useful things for this country and for countries overseas. £15 billion is the estimated direct cost of our membership of the European Union. Half a billion on ID cards. That makes a total of £58.5 billion, plus the savings on the bureaucrats, the quangos. As an example, we're committed in here to abolishing the utterly useless Regional Development Agency, which costs £2.3 billion a year. There's many other fields which we would also be cutting the bureaucracy and the quangos. The Tories believe they can save 10 million that way. The Lib Dems believe they can save 15 billion that way. Because we would also be cutting the politically correct quangos, we believe we can save 30 billion. This gives us a pot to do things with of £85 billion worth of savings, as opposed to the Tories' 10 billion, without cutting any frontline services which actually need to be there. Additionally, we fund it with what is now established through what's been done with quantitative easing, that has finally confirms that our analysis of the banking system, the nationalist analysis, which is fundamentally wrong, fundamentally corrupt, because it's been creating wealth, money out of nothing, credit out of nothing, and then charging us for the benefit of having our own money supply. That doesn't have to be. We would go in for a form of nationalist quantitative easing, producing the money that's needed, not to rebuild the bank balances of corrupt banks, which got into that mess through their own incompetence. We are not interested in them. We would use a form of quantitative easing primarily and first of all to fund a full-scale programme to create a new generation of safe, British-designed, British-built nuclear power stations, because without that being done very quickly, the lights are going to start going out. And a safe, really effective nuclear industry is one of the examples of what this country could and should do with our skills base, with our inventiveness, with our industrial reputation and record. We could do that and create
The British National Party's leader there, Nick Griffin, launching their manifesto, choosing St George's Day to do it, launching their policies at a press conference in Stoke-on-Trent. The party